Welcome to the pharmaphorum podcast. This is web editor Nicole Raleigh, and today's guest is Dr. Craig Eagle, who is Chief Medical Officer of Guardant Health, a precision medicine company that offers blood tests to inform cancer treatment decisions. Welcome, Craig.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Guardant has a portfolio of products that span across screening, recurrence monitoring, and therapy selection, focused on conquering cancer with data. And today we'll be discussing Guardant's participation in the National Cancer Institute's Vanguard study and its partnership with Quest Diagnostics in passing. But before we dive into any of that, Craig, I was wondering if you could briefly introduce yourself to listeners and provide a short overview of the journey that has led you to doing what you do today at Guardant.
Sure, be delighted. So my name's Craig Eagle. I'm the Global Chief Medical Officer of Guardant Health. I started my career in Australia, for those that may pick up the accent, and started there actually training as a hematopathologist and clinical hematologist. And eventually that led me to intense interest in the molecular basis of disease. And this is also around the time the Human Genome Project started. And so I did some preliminary work looking at DNA in the bloodstream. In that case, it was associated with pregnancy and women and their baby. That ultimately led me to join the pharmaceutical industry in Australia, and then I located to the US. From there, after many years of developing drugs and therapies for cancer patients, I kept in the back of my mind this concept of better precision medicine, precision therapy, using the mutation DNA from cancer as I started my career. And eventually that found Guardant had a same focus as I did, with a focus on finding the DNA mutations in the blood to identify the molecular basis of cancer. And the other part that was exciting is I did some early work in screening for cancer and treating cancer early with my therapeutics. And so again, Guardant uniquely had this opportunity to cover the spectrum from screening through to advanced cancer. And so that led me to join Guardant because their mission was very similar to the focus I'd had all my career, which is the more we understand cancer, the better we can identify the molecular mechanisms, the more precise we can be in our therapies.
Thank you, Craig. That's quite a journey. So let's turn to our main theme now. And perhaps to begin with there, you could describe the landscape when it comes to unmet needs in early detection, as you've been mentioning your base there in screening, and also patient adherence.
Sure. So early detection of cancer is something that has a significant unmet need. There are only a few cancers that officially can be screened today. Those cancers in particular, a cancer like colorectal cancer in the US is the second leading cause of cancer death, even today. So there is an active effort to screen for this cancer because we know that if we get this cancer early, your survival can improve. For example, advanced cancer is often when symptoms developed and the survival at 5 years is only about 16%. If we can screen and get people early, even in the earliest stage 1, that survival catapults up to over 91% survival at 5 years. The challenge, of course, is that screening at the moment is often associated with unpleasant activities or activities that people are afraid of, perhaps unnecessarily, and also it involves commitment and time over a period of days, seeing a physician, having the test at home, or having the test done after several days of preparation. So this limits adherence, and we know adherence across, particularly in the US, is at 58%. This is not enough to change the mortality of cancer that I mentioned. So that led us to the concept of imagine a simple blood test to identify patients with colorectal cancer. And this then led to the development of our Shield test, which is now, happy to say, FDA approved as a primary choice in colon cancer screening. So with the simple blood draw, people can be screened for colon cancer, and hopefully we can prevent further death from this terrible disease. But it doesn't end there. As I mentioned, very few cancers have this screening paradigm. Many cancers do not. And so part of our ongoing effort is to explore looking at more than colon cancer, but looking at almost a pan-multi-cancer screening test from, again, a simple blood test. Now, when we do early data in adherence, which is the piece that's the challenge, as I mentioned, we find that when we looked at our first 20,000 tests where doctors ordered the test, that we had over 90% of people completing the test. So this is outstanding from our point of view because this solves one of the major challenges with screening, and that is having the screening test done. In addition, there are some areas in the US where screening is very poor. And what we found in areas like the Appalachia, where screening is very, very low, we shifted the screening adherence from 45% all the way up to 90% as well. So it's not just those places that are active in health screening or people that are active in health screening. It is also in places where it is more difficult to get screening done, that our concept of a simple blood test to complete screening is holding true. And this is very exciting from our perspective.
It is exciting. Now, you've given us a lot of information there, Craig, so I'm just going to unpack it all. Essentially, it all comes down to data and conquering cancer with data and having an early screening process that is less invasive and has a greater adherence due to this lessening of that invasiveness. I mean, to go from 58% outside of the Appalachian geography, 58% adherence to 90% adherence is quite something. So also just to perhaps reinforce what you were discussing also, which is Guardant Shield. Shield is the first and only blood test to receive full FDA approval, I believe, as a primary screening option for colorectal cancer in average risk adults aged 45 and older. On the broader scale on the power of data, Craig, I was wondering if you could walk us through Guardant's learning data engine and how you are using these clinical insights to tackle key medical questions in similar and other areas of unmet medical need.
Yes, no. So one of the areas that we see as important is the data and the clinical data, as you mentioned. With the data, what we're finding is that we can start to understand diseases, and let's talk just through cancer for the moment. As we think about that data that we collect and that precision around the DNA and the changes in the DNA with cancer, we start to collect more and more information as a person will go through the cancer journey, whether they start that cancer journey at early stage cancer or at late stage cancer. By having data and understanding, if you like, where the disease they have has gone before, by collecting the data from other people with similar cancers, this provides significant insights to enable interception of that cancer journey to improve outcomes and improve overall health and survival. And so what we're doing is we have an infrastructure set up that collects every single bit of data. We de-identify it so that way it is truly understanding the disease, and we then are able to access that database. And in that database, we have over 1 million tests and over 350,000 people at the moment with all stages of cancer and all types of cancer that we're able to access and compare a result from a person to the results of our database. That enables us then to provide insights to the treating physician, the cancer specialist, on where the patient is going. And so this data now becomes a roadmap, if you like, on the cancer journey for people as they see their oncologists and they get the information. And providing information on someone's cancer, we're aiming to provide more insightful and relevant decisions to that person versus decisions that apply generally to that cancer.
Thank you, Craig. So I want to shift back now to the NCI point and its Vanguard study. And I was wondering if you could tell us more about Guardant Shield MCD or multi-cancer detection test within that study.
So Guardant's multi-cancer detection test is looking at those cancers beyond colorectal cancer that potentially can benefit from screening. The NCI, or the National Cancer Institute, a government institute in the US, is running a study where they invited companies to bring forth their technology for assessment to be included in this study that is looking at screening for people for different types of cancer at the same time through a blood test, the multi-cancer detection or MCD test. So we went forward with the government and put our technology, and they tested our technology by sending us samples of different cancers as well as normals, all mixed in, and they saw our technology performing to the standard that met the criteria to enter the study. So we're now part of that study. And as we talk about data and talk about the importance of data, we've also taken that multi-cancer detection test and assessed it on our database and looked at number of cases, 20,000 cases, and we've looked at how our multi-cancer detection test performs in the real world. And interestingly, and to our expectation, it met the same criteria as the NCI test. And that criteria was 99% specificity with a positive predictive value of 41%. So not only is the NCI testing our technology in a multi-cancer study, but also that multi-cancer test, which is available in the US under certain circumstances, is also performing in the real world at that level. And so this helps us try and solve that unmet need of most cancers today are not actually screened, but could be in the future with a simple blood test.
Absolutely. And that real world setting is hugely important. So, Craig, we've discussed Guardant Shield. We've discussed Guardant Shield's MCD test. What about Guardant Reveal?
So Guardant Reveal is a monitoring test. It's monitoring cancer and again, the individual's health journey through cancer across the whole segment. So people who have early cancer where it's treated, and now they're monitoring for any recurrence. So Guardant Reveal is looking for the molecular signs of that cancer recurring. It's also used in the more advanced setting where now we're looking at the person's response to therapy. So once a doctor starts therapy, you look at Guardant Reveal or monitoring that says if you're responding to that therapy. And we're very excited about this ability to monitor disease, cancer molecularly. Let me give you an example. In the advanced setting, we've recently published a study that looked at over 500 cancer patients undergoing immunotherapy. And in those, we took blood samples at 3 and 6 months. And what we found was that we were able to identify people that had response to that therapy through the molecular blood test. The important thing is that we were able to identify them up to 5 months earlier than the more traditional CT scan or RECIST response criteria. In addition, even within those people that had a RECIST response, we were able to identify people where their tumor was responding on the X-ray, but not molecularly. And on the blood test, there was another group that did respond. And what we found that it added value to the traditional CAT scan, because if you had a CAT scan that showed response and the blood test showed response, you had the best outcome in that group of people that had CT scan. So what this is again doing is enabling more acute and additional perspective to monitoring cancer across the entire cancer journey.
Thank you, Craig. So, everything we've been discussing today taken into consideration, I have a final question for you. What are your, and indeed Guardant's, hopes for the future of precision medicine?
As we look to the future, we're continuing to push the boundaries of what can be done with a good biopsy. And we're aiming really to create a paradigm in treatment for cancer work. Now, to do that, part of the paradigm has to be in collaboration with biopharma. And so today we're looking at ways with biopharma to accelerate the treatment paradigm and bringing those treatments forward. To that end, we're partnering with over 190 biopharma customers, 19 of the top 20 companies, in fact. And this is giving us unique visibility into emerging biomarkers in combination with new therapies and testing needs. And by providing this data, the genomic and epigenomic insights with our blood testing platform, we can actually generate translational research that not only identifies the treatment, but improves the likelihood of identifying the right patients for that treatment. And part of that expertise when you work with these companies is you have a diagnostic that not only is approved across the globe, but we have access in laboratories globally as these companies developing treatments do that. And one example recently was approval we had with ESR1 in breast cancer. This was in partnership with AstraZeneca, and this was through a study called SERENA-6. And this was presented recently at the American Society of Clinical Oncology and published in New England Journal of Medicine. And that's a study that showed by using a liquid test and monitoring women with breast cancer and finding the first molecular sign of the resistance to therapy with our blood test and changing them to a second agent, the AstraZeneca product in this case, people actually had a better outcome in this randomized phase 3 trial. So this is an example of how combining with a company like AstraZeneca, linking with a new therapy and using molecular blood testing, we can change the future of cancer. And we're looking to repeat that across many other treatments and cancer types.
Thank you, Craig. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And that concludes another episode of the pharmaphorum podcast. You can find more information about this episode, including a download link and information about previous installments at pharmaphorum.com/podcasts. The pharmaphorum podcast is also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Podbean, and pretty much wherever else you download your other podcasts from. Just search for pharmaphorum and follow and hit subscribe. Of course, don't forget to visit our website itself, where you can sign up for daily and weekly news and analysis bulletins. And do follow us on Blue Sky and LinkedIn at pharmaphorum. That's all for now. Thank you for listening.